Welcome to another episode of This Was Supposed to Be Easy.
We've had these conversations on at least 1,000 car rides and thought it might be time for other people to join us. This is Cheryl.
And my name's Amy.
Today, we finish our conversation with Dr. Jeremy Bond as he helps us think about ways to feel more motivated with our money and how you can use a raise to celebrate with your current self while also setting money aside for your future self. We will hear about the car Jeremy had no business buying, talk about building financial literacy with our daughters and ourselves, thinking about multiple income streams, and finally, we'll finish that list of book recommendations that definitely grew past the original two that Jeremy promised.
My point is, like, when you're coming out of college, you're used to living lean. You can increase your lifestyle and provide for your future self. You can do both if you're careful, if you're lucky.
I'm going to jump in right there
Yeah.
because I like with my personality, right? The different ways that we're wired. That's always where I'm thinking, like, how can I set it aside before I'm used to seeing it and never have to think about it again, I guess. Like as an academic, I know exactly what I have to do to get my next raise. I know what that next raise will be because it's in an agreement that already exists. And I am thinking, okay, if next year's the year that I go for that raise, where can I put it for my future so I never get used to having it?
And that's where you're reminding me of some things I've suggested to folks over the years, Cheryl. One of which is if you know you're about to get a raise. So I've been really fortunate. The last 3 years, my employer has done 3% per year. And some people listening right now probably think that's garbage, but my career has been largely in higher ed, and getting 3% 3 years running is the exact opposite. It's a gold mine. Higher ed has struggled a little bit. We have an aging population, fewer students, etc. But every year that happens, I split it. I split it with today me and future me. And this is maybe one of the places where I differ a little bit from a lot of the gurus and try to make room for what I think Amy was alluding to earlier, this not being too highly prescribed. You get that. We'll use your example and my example, Cheryl. So you get the raise. First, the key is to remember they don't give it to you all at once. They're going to spread it out over X number of pays for the following year. So then the next thing you do is find out, how do I change my retirement contribution? And, maybe the raise works out to 5% of your salary and you want to feel it. Today's Cheryl deserves to feel it. And I think that, again, this is what distinguishes me a little bit. You should be able to do something kind of that someone else might think is frivolous or silly. It might be a trip you've been wanting to take, or maybe it's a Michelin rated restaurant you want to try it. It's something that, it's some largesse. For somebody, it's a purse, it's a car, it's whatever it might be. It's what you can afford. That's the first thing, because nobody wants to be paying 19% interest on a purse that they had to have 3 years later. That's the road to ruin. And we can talk about debt and all that. It really is a different side of things. Because if you take the actions we're talking about, the behaviors follow them. There's a whole structure of actions, behaviors, beliefs, values, I think. And I might be getting it wrong, but it plays into this. So to answer your question is, don't give it all to future Cheryl. Look at that raise amount and figure out, how do I split it? How do I give future Cheryl her due? And today Cheryl gets to have some fun too.
I like it.
And that's what I would say to that same college grad. You're going to start the new job. You're probably going to get a untouched paycheck or 2 or 3 or 4 before they get you through benefits orientation, before you can sign up for your retirement savings options. And where do we put our retirement savings money? Does it need to be complicated, or do we just ask 2 things? What's the match? How much? So now you know how much you're going to save at a bare minimum because you want their money. And then from the vendor, you're looking for what kind of fund. You only need the one S&P 500 index fund.
The same 500. So
yep. Excellent. But I think for that new grad, take some money from those first couple checks and do something that's not dumb to you. I might think it's kind of silly, right? Their mother, their father, their older sibling might think it's kind of silly. Their 60-year-old coworker who's been chipping away at it for 38 years might think what they're about to do is silly. But if you can pay for it, then it's done. And even if later you look back at it and you're like, yeah, wow, I've got a what's a Louis Vuitton suitcase, and I can't afford to take it anywhere, right? But you did the thing, and maybe it's an experience. I know younger folks are getting away from some of our materialism, which is awesome, and they're having experiences instead. I'm from the stuff generation, and it's not like we don't do experiences, but damn, do we have a lot of stuff. And I don't just mean me and Amy, I just mean our people. We have lots of stuff. But I that's what I would say to that is it doesn't need to be all or nothing. And I think when it is all or nothing in terms of a raise, that's when we lose our steam. That's when it feels like, well, I'm not even going to enjoy the money, or if I'm not going to get to have any fun by taking on a second job temporarily, our motivation as humans evaporates pretty quickly. In fact, a non-financial book that I wanted to mention for this show, and hopefully some people are thinking, oh, good, because I can't read this stuff about finance. Read Shift. It's a Heath and Heath book. Shift is just the short title, but it's about how to actually make meaningful change happen. And they use this amazing metaphor about an elephant and a rider. Do you have it, Cheryl?
I don't have that one.
No.
I think I have a different one of theirs. And I
You
was
have
like,
the moments
The
book.
the
power
Yeah.
of
moments.
moments.
Yes, the
I'm a
power of
fan.
moments.
I'm a fan to the
Love
point
it.
where I think I either finally connected on LinkedIn with Chip or Dan, the two Heaths that do the writing. I think they're brothers.
Yes, they are.
Doesn't yeah, but I had a total fanboy moment. Like Amy, I'm connected with Dan Heath on LinkedIn. I think he even liked something I commented, so that's a big deal. But Shift, this idea of an elephant and a rider. The rider is this. It's you. You're 150 pounds soaking wet, we'll say, and it's the stuff you should do. The elephant is the stuff you want to do. The elephant says, go to Bermuda, put the ticket on your Amex. When I worked with AI a little bit to figure out how to structure what I wanted to say to the two of you, it suggested telling parts of my relatable journey. Amy will remember this. We lived in an apartment. I had purchased a car fairly recently that I had no business owning at that point. This was like, it's got to be close to 25 years ago, maybe more. And it was right around this time that she lost her job. And it's not a ding on Amy, it was totally unavoidable.
We
Uh,
talked about it.
yeah. And we, it was not our best moment. We owed eight grand to American Express, and somebody listening right now could be thinking, "Oh God, I wish I only owed 8 grand." Just real quick, those were 1999, 2001-ish dollars, somewhere in that range. So it's maybe owing more like 20. I don't know. I'd have to run the numbers.
Was
It
enough.
was
It
good
felt like
news,
enough.
right? Yeah, owing an amount to Amex or MasterCard. And I think the interest was probably, and again, something somebody would kill for now. We were probably burning 10%, 9.9% was our interest rate on that. And the lack of understanding that is another thing that gets people into so much trouble. This is where Shift, the book, is just such a wonderful read because you'll understand why it is we did something we couldn't afford to do, or why we gave up our diet, why we gave up splitting raises between our future selves and our current selves. You can only wrangle that elephant in for so long, which makes the last point you made, Cheryl, so key. Make it automatic.
Yeah.
Make it automatic. The newest thing that a lot of employers have through their retirement vendor is it'll automatically increase your retirement savings on a date of your choosing each year by an amount of your choosing. You get to tell it. I don't know if where either of you are doing this, but my brother just took an exciting new role. His employer's doing it. Mine allows it. And I didn't do anything gigantic. I set it up to do an extra 1% per year until it hits 15, I think. Because at the beginning of my career, pre-marriage, pre-children, all that jazz, I did 15%, which, it's not a point of pride. It's more just a humorous kind of thing. I would hit the IRS maximum in those days. And so my last two checks in December each year didn't have my pocket picked by future me. And it was like getting a little Christmas bonus. If you can figure out where your psychological blind spots are, where your elephant gets restless financially, you can learn to keep that thing in check. And when you know you can't, leave a little room for it. Just don't fall into the trap of, gosh, I really want to eat at Ruth's Chris. Great. Can you pay for it in cash? Can it be a debit card or a cash transaction? If yes, order your steak medium rare. Have a great meal. But if you're in a situation where you're going to go and you're going to be paying 19% interest on that one meal from Ruth's Chris 6 months from now, 18 months from now, don't go. Go get an $8 steak from Walmart and put it on the broiler at home. Better still, get some hamburger. That's where you're at in that moment. And it's not bad. You're trying to harness desire for your future self. This is where I'm going to mention, I'm lying. I'm going to mention at least two more books. But the next one, I think, is for anyone that's youngerish or mid-career. It would fit the situation we just discussed, Cheryl, with you got a raise. What do you do with it? How do you make that happen automatically? Do it. Set it up with your bank. Set it up with your vendor. Hide the money from yourself. Do weird things. We got this mug that it's not about the mug. It's an Alcatraz Al Capone mug, but it's filled with change. Whatever's in my pocket, change at the end of the day goes in the mug. I buy my morning tea with the mug, and then psychologically, I think my tea is free. It isn't free, but it's a trick I use. Find your tricks. Use your tricks. Read My Rich BF by Vivian Tu. It's not a finance book I would have typically chosen, but I was looking for something that I could suggest to mine and Amy's daughter. I was looking for a book I could gift to other young people, like at open houses, their graduation. She's cool. I think she's still in her 20s, maybe, or early 30s, but she's done all of the things that feel further in the past for me. Gone to college, made bad mistakes with money. The way that story ends in mine and Amy's experience, part of that Amex bill, part of that job loss news, I had bought clothing on credit to start a job that I was promised that I didn't get. So it took a long time. But that day in our apartment, knowing that now I had payments on a Jaguar, yes, I said Jaguar, it was used, but it was a car I had no business owning. But it was so choice. I love that car. So we're all going to have these YOLO kinds of moments, right? But you can recover if you want to recover. I kept it for years. It was a great car. But, there were some tears that day in our dinette area of the apartment because we knew then that we needed to do some different things. And Vivian's writing style is so relatable. She's so cool. She's done so very, very well for herself that I think, that's a better choice than maybe the Ramsey book for younger people would be Vivian's book.
Jeremy, you said
Yeah.
you bought it for your daughter. And something Amy and I talked about, I think ahead of you joining us today, was just really the idea that I'm going to say, as women, because it was the two of us talking and you mentioned your daughter, one of the things I just am really hopeful for with our daughters is that we have this financial sense, knowledge, whatever you want to call it, that ensures that we can be independent, right? That we might have a partner, but we don't have that partner because we're dependent upon them,
Mhm.
right? Like that we can live our life without being reliant on someone else financially. Does that make sense? And I'm
It
wondering if
does.
that was the impetus for that purchase or for why you
Well,
might give that to graduates.
it definitely plays in. And I think to be really fair, transparent, totally open and not get too far off track, it's no wonder that for women, that's the core concern is I want to maintain my independence. I don't need a spouse or a partner for financial survival. We could look at any other underrepresented or historically oppressed group, but if we just look at women in America, what? You couldn't have your own bank account as a woman up through the 70s. You only won the right to vote barely 104-ish, 5-ish years ago, give or take. Don't check my history, but point being, our systems up until even just a generation or two ago were pretty clearly designed to keep women dependent on the financial support of a male partner. And so wanting something different, because that can lead down to all sorts of dark places where, yeah, this arrangement isn't good, but I'm living indoors and able to eat regularly and I'm provided for, so I guess I'll tolerate it. It doesn't have to be that way anymore. That's the other thing I really love about Vivian's work. As far as I know, she's single. And if she is married or coupled and there's a prenuptial agreement, it's going to be to protect her assets, not her partner. She's just an amazingly successful young person. Because I do think that matters. And I'd say now too, maybe in 2025, for any gender, that I don't want anyone to be getting married or staying married because, well, they pay the bills. I'd never make it on my own. And so hopefully we're finally getting past all of that as a society. But yeah, definitely a theme in my thinking and part of what motivated giving that as a gift. Ella was actually able to work it out in one of her classes. So reading it became part of her course of study, which I loved because it meant she actually read it. And that's the point, right?
Dual
Nobody wants
purpose.
to, the kids don't want to listen to me lecture about this stuff. So they need some source of information they can connect to and relate to. And Vivian, I think, is super relatable. The last thing I wanted to cover today, if we still have a few more minutes, is something I was really late to jump in on. But you will start to see things if you poke into finances and reading and podcast, you'll hear people start to talk about passive income or multiple income streams. The only passive income I earned my whole life up through like 2019 was just the interest or dividends, which is, a specific type of earnings on your investments, on your savings. It's the bank saying, hey, thanks for letting us hold on to your money. Here's a quarter. Or it's that S&P 500 index fund that you bought into as retirement savings. Remember, it's putting your money across 500 companies, and one of those companies will say is Procter and Gamble, and Procter and Gamble says, we appreciate you stockholders. We're going to pay you cash for owning our stock. We're going to spread the money we made around. That's a dividend, basically. That's the only kind of passive income I had, but there's so many other avenues out there.
Can you name a few?
Absolutely. I think the one that we finally branched out into was first rental real estate. And you got to be careful. There are formulas, there's whole other books to read because you want the property to be cash flow positive. You want it to make a little money. Worst case, you want it to break even, but you don't necessarily want to buy yourself a new bill, a new obligation. But I'd say too that passive income is kind of a misleading term. It would imply that you didn't do anything. You're making money while you sleep. That's the ideal. That's the first type I talked about, the interest, dividends. But if you own property and someone else lives there and they pay you to live there, they're going to break stuff. Like the one long-term rental we own, the guy dropped his rent off yesterday. He's a friend. It's been great having that kind of an arrangement with a tenant, but he let me know it's time for a new toilet seat. So I will do that glamorous work of going to his house and extracting the old toilet seat and installing a new one because I can. But there, other forms I think too are if you can get into a space like you and Amy are now in, and you begin to have, what's the term? I want to say advertisers, sponsors, people who want to reach your audience. So they're willing to pay for that opportunity. And you're just going to keep on doing what you normally do. Right? You're not going to have a different show or an extra show to do because there's now mention of product X at the beginning of your show. That's another passive income possibility. There are other categories too, but I'm not expert enough to get into the others. We have a short-term rental, but that's just another real estate form. That one we knew going in would cost us money, but there's a whole other strategy there to also to provide for a retirement avenue.
Yeah.
But I think thinking about these other income streams, I mention it because the data tells us most Americans are disengaged with their work. They don't like it. Most of us have heard about things like quiet quitting, the great resignation over the arc of the pandemic. If you kind of hate your job, and I talked to a friend a couple of weeks ago, they literally said to me, it's miserable, but I only have 9 years to go. They didn't put the emphasis on the 9 years. I'm adding that emphasis because I felt so sad because I used to say stuff like that. And my work was never miserable, but I had a pretty stressful arc of years and it was a countdown. I had to kind of talk myself into being in love with it some days. It doesn't need to be like that. There are other choices. But I think you have to be ready to have people raise eyebrows at you, to be very suspicious. I have an uncle who's done very well in rental real estate. You'd never know. He lives in a simple house. He refers to himself as a bum. Really good guy, has done very well. But early on, when he was able to walk away from a job as a painter, as an automobile painter, there were family members who were speculating about all the illegal things he was doing. He must be involved in this or involved in that, because they couldn't accept that there is just this other way, possibly. And so you have to be ready for that too. And that's a trickier part, maybe where I'll close this. I want to offer everyone one specific idea that they should go off and do tomorrow if they can. And then one kind of takeaway that takes us all the way back to the beginning. Then if you two want to say more or probe anything, we can of course do that. But the first is go set up some kind of automatic savings. Maybe it is saying, I'm going to go look at my 401k. It's time I figured out how to get that employer's money. Go do it. You can do it anytime. You can change it anytime. And they may not tell you that. There were stretches in mine and Amy's life where I filled out the paperwork to cut it to zero. When we moved from our apartment to the first home we purchased, I reduced my retirement savings to zero. I was super lucky. My employer did 10% that wasn't a match. That's the pension of the 1960s, right? Most employers are not going to put money in your retirement unless you do, but you can change it anytime. So I'd say go do it. Even if you think 6 months from now you're going to have to lower it, raise it, whatever. Maybe it's not a retirement vehicle, but maybe you can go open your first savings account at your bank where you've had your checking account for a long, long time. And you set up an auto transfer every other Friday, move $10 into that savings account. When you realize you don't miss 10, go change it to 20.
Yeah.
My takeaway is just to keep in mind that there will be things all around you that make you think you're missing out, that you must be doing something wrong. We had neighbors many years ago. I knew what they did for a living. Lovely people, about our age, give or take, brand new vehicles, gorgeous brand new vehicles, constant renovation and improvement at their home. I just had no idea how they were paying for all of it. And someone shared with me something they should not have shared with me in that juncture. And I was able to learn, oh, they aren't. I feel so much better. It was a mixture of what I think Tom Stanley might refer to this. One of the gurus refers to economic outpatient care. That is when mom and dad or grandma and grandpa or whomever are actually funding the young person's lifestyle. The other is debt. But you have to be ready to be surrounded by people who have made different decisions and be able to remember that wealth doesn't look like we were taught to think it looks. It isn't mansions and fountains and tigers on a gold leash. It's stability. It's sleeping
I
well
mean,
at
it is not the DuckTales. We're not going to
no.
swim through a room
Yeah,
of
that's
gold
right.
coins.
We talked about that. Probably most of us, and if you think about it, swimming through a great big vault filled with hard metal coins is not going to be the exciting experience that Scrooge McDuck made it seem to be. But that's the stuff. Amy, I love that example. And we talked about that when we were brainstorming, even had me visit with you and Cheryl. That's a cartoon that you and I both watched. And that was the vision of wealth, right? Bottomless money that Scrooge McDuck had. And he'd swim around in it. If you're a Breaking Bad fan, you remember the scene, how many times we saw the pallet of cash in Walter's storage unit. It's not a spoiler. If you're not a Breaking Bad fan, go watch the series. If you haven't seen it yet, I might argue that you're wasting your life. It's a great show. Everyone should watch it. But the one guy at one point, he's like, I just have to. And he lies down on the pallet of money like it's a mattress. And that's what we've been shown are those examples. And some of us will get there. We'll have tens of millions, hundreds of millions, 100 billion. But essentially, statistically speaking, none of us will. So instead of saying, well, I'm never going to get that, I'll just be broke and stuck my whole life, there is a beautiful middle ground that you really don't have to think a lot about. It can be very simple. So you're going to read either The Millionaire Next Door or Stop Acting Rich and Start Living or Acting Like a Real Millionaire. Those are Tom's first and last books. Either one of them's great. Read My Rich BF by Vivian Tu. Maybe check out Shift
Hmm.
from the Heaths, because that will help you realize, okay, this is what I'm going to need to understand in order to do this well. And it works for anything. Maybe you've been wanting to start exercising soon, but your rider's the one who wants to exercise. Your elephant likes kind of lounging in bed until the moment you have to get up, right? Your rider knows you should go online and get to your benefits site and change your 403b contribution today. Your elephant wants to put it on a list for something maybe you'll do after you get through Christmas, right? Because Christmas is always so expensive, right? No, tell the elephant we're doing it today because we'll forget all about it by Christmas. You'll get through Christmas either way. Last but not least, this was so much fun. I don't get to talk about this stuff in this way. And I just wanted to thank the two of you for having me do it. Amy, it was probably a little weird for you having me tell stories from our past kind of just through my lens. And if anybody out there thinks they are the neighbor I was talking about or the coworker, obviously I have just the one brother. So yes, all those comments were about my one biological brother. Everybody else, you're wrong. I made up all those scenarios. So it's not about you at all. But thank you, really. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. And I just know I'm walking away thinking about realizing that to be surrounded by people who might be making different decisions means that I had to make a decision of my own in the first place. And that's, I think, an important step that so many
Yeah,
people
remember that.
they never get to. They just spend the money. They don't make a decision. So I am grateful that I get to walk away with that.
Thank you, Cheryl. I'm glad. I'm glad that there's a takeaway.
Thank you so much for joining us. And I think that there's a lot of people out there that are able to listen. And I think one of the most important pieces from all of this, though we talked about it from like the younger perspective, is there isn't, of course, the sooner you can join and the longer you can be on the ride, the more you end up with at the end. But there's not you don't miss the window, like,
No,
of entry point. So if today you say, what I need to do something different, then do something different because your future self will appreciate you doing something different from today. And you can't go back in time and change any of those things. So start with where you're at. And I
uh,
think that everything you said and every piece you gave us benefited from just starting at least where you are. No one's getting in their
it
time machine. No one's going back 20 years. So
oh, and I don't think I articulated that idea as well as you just did, Amy, but I could not agree more. It's cliche, but gurus will tell you the best time to start is yesterday. The second best time to start is today. The third best, worst is tomorrow. Because time, again, I know I mentioned this, time is the most reliable tool, but too many of us use, well, even if I start today, I'll only have, and then they drop this six-figure number, like I'll only have 250,000 when I'm 65. And if you just ask yourself one simple question, which is better, zero or $250,000? Everyone takes the 250,000. So maybe it won't be enough to have Robin Leach call you up and invite you onto the old Lifestyle of the Rich and Famous show, but it beats the hell out of nothing every day.
thank you very much. And we appreciate you being here.
This wraps up our conversation with Jeremy, but Amy and I couldn't finish up with this round of money talk before looking at credit cards. Make sure to listen to episode 23 and join us in remembering those first forays into credit card ownership and all that we've learned so far. As always, we welcome you to share your questions, thoughts, and even more ideas and strategies with our community. Use the comments feature on Spotify, Facebook, or Instagram to continue this conversation. Please remember how fast and easy it is to hit the like button wherever you are listening and consider sharing this episode with someone you love or even like a lot.
Thanks for tuning in to This Was Supposed to Be Easy. Remember, the best stories are the ones we live.
Join us next time as we uncover more tales and thoughts that just might change your world while we navigate those things that we didn't expect to be so hard.
Stay curious, stay connected, and keep wondering.